Welcome back, everybody, to the Wrestling Trading Card Collector Series. Tony and I, we particularly enjoyed the episode we did a few weeks back with Jamie and Frankie because we decided to wrap that one up in a topic rather than just focusing on one guy and his history within the wrestling trading card hobby. And at that time, the WCW autographs were sort of in the news and there was talk about their authenticity. So Tony and I were going to do an episode on that. And then we thought, well, let's combine this with the collector series and reach out to two of the sort of top WCW guys. And we got Frankie and Jamie Wallace. We had a great discussion on those. And Tony and I we're talking about let's do another topic based episode. And one of the things that we used to talk about back in the days of the monthly recaps and the three counts, and we never really got into it in a big way, was the notion of wrestling as sport or non-sport. And then in particular, non-sports in general, because we tend to talk about on these shows, when we talk about wrestling, we tend to go more towards football, baseball. We don't often talk about non-sports and the massive sort of variety that is in that world. So to that end, we decided, okay, who's next on the list? And we're going down of our top collectors and who would be the perfect guys. And, these guys need no introduction. I mean, unless you're new to the hobby, you know who both these guys are. You've seen them on this channel many, many times. First, the one and only Mr. Ryan Schear, who's the co-host of Title Match on this channel that you'll see usually once a month, a couple of times a month, and the one and only Chuckster, Mr. Chuck Davy. Chuck is the lead archivist for WrestlingTradingCards.com and the Wrestling Card Price Guide, and one of our closest confidants in the hobby. And I can safely say I probably wouldn't even be collecting anymore if it wasn't for this man. So, guys, thanks to be here. Now, Ryan, we're going to start with you because you run a site called Non-Sport Showcase on Instagram, and you often say, even though I see football helmets and Brutus the Barber shears in the back, that your sort of strength and your place in the hobby sort of stems from the non-sports world. And that's what we're going to talk about. Introduce yourself, talk about your collecting in that world, and we'll go over to Chuck.
Yeah, so Ryan Schear, Non-Sport Showcase. You guys have seen me on WTC with Adam Gelman doing a lot of the product breakdowns for WWE and other wrestling products. For my story is kind of similar to a lot of people where when I was 15, 16, so 95, 96, I just did sports pretty much. And I kind of dabbled in everything: hockey, football, baseball, basketball. I think I opened professional bull riding cards at one point, because there was an autograph of, I'm going to offend some bull riding fans, but he was Jules' husband. I can't remember his name. But when that set came out, he was really popular. And so I was trying to get that. So I do love football, American football, but it's gotten too expensive in the sports realm. I've dabbled in wrestling cards now for 25 years. So my first set was 98 Superstars. That was the first that I opened. And I remember the first time I met Tony on one of these, we were talking about that because he was asking me, hey, what's your background, stuff like that. And I said, well, I opened 98 Superstars and it was pretty cool. I pulled a China autograph. And he was like, what? I go, yeah, I pulled one out of a pack. He goes, I thought it was Redemption. I said, no. You remember that, Tony?
Yep.
Yep. I said, no. I remember as clear as day. Signed in ballpoint in the upper left-hand corner. I pulled it out of a pack. And he's like, well, I guess I got to update WTC now again.
Back then.
So, but I do love non-sports. It's taken off for me as a collecting focus over the last 5 years. And I just, movies, music, TV shows, it's really something I really do enjoy. And, Arnold Schwarzenegger will never tear his ACL. Yeah. So the values are always going to be there. So, but it's a fun thing. And we'll get into it later, but there's a lot of avenues on how you can expand that part of your collection.
How about you, Chuck? You're a big Batman guy.
I'm a big Batman guy.
I know you got a lot. Talk about your other stuff in non-sports.
Yeah, when unlike all the other people who actually are in the wrestling card guide, I was never into sports. Not basketball, not football, not baseball. Never got into it. I've always been a pop culture guy, and I think that's might be why Tony and I hit it off so well a lot of times, because we have a lot to talk about. But again, a lot of people that I talked to had gotten into collecting in their teens, just like Brian just said. I got into it in my single digit years. Batman was just becoming the big thing on TV. The first Batman set was coming out in little wax packs. And me and all my neighborhood kids, we'd ride our bikes to the end of the street at this little mom and pop store and buy a pack a week with the money we made mowing grass or whatever. I didn't really consider myself a collector. It was just Batman, and we wanted it. And Batman has always been kind of my big go-to other than wrestling. But then once I got a little older and started exploring other avenues, I was finding stuff of the old TV shows when I was a kid growing up. Yeah, I'm probably one of the oldest collectors in the sport. So when I was growing up, those TV cards I had was the Addams Family, Dark Shadows, the Monkees. Believe it or not, I got some old Beatles cards. Then I got into the 70s, and we had Charlie's Angels. We had oh my goodness, so many different and movie cards. We had Jumanji cards. We had Jurassic Park cards, and I got into those. And I don't know how I finally got into wrestling. A friend of mine took me to an indie wrestling show one time, and after that, he started teaching me a little bit about wrestling, because I didn't really follow it that much when I was a kid. I didn't get into wrestling till I was almost in my 20s, and took me to an indie show, and I found my first wrestling set was the 87 Tops, and that was my first set that I bought, and I enjoyed it so much that's what I just started gearing my searches towards. And all the other collections have just kind of gone by the wayside. They're still hanging around. I still got them, the hoarder that I am, but they're just kind of sitting in albums in a closet right now. And I've just kind of transitioned all of my energy into wrestling. Now, if I see something Batman come up once in a while, I'm having Batman. I even got when they started the Gotham show here on TV a few years ago, they put out a couple years of those cards. I got all of those cards. So Batman's just kind of always been in the peripheral vision of me. I always try to keep my eye on that.
Yeah, my story is very similar, Chuck. I remember as a kid, Charlie's Angels for sure. Star Wars was big when that came out, and I remember the blue sets that are now worth a fortune. I had tons of those. I remember Planet of the Apes, and then hockey, obviously, because Canada and Toronto's a big hockey town. But once I got older and got out of cards, the only thing I kept were my original Topps 85 wrestling, and then that sort of was the anchor to keep going with wrestling. But like I remember Star Wars was big. Now, Tony, chime in this one as well. Where would Star Wars and Star Trek be relative to, say, wrestling? Because they're huge, and there's a shit ton of releases in that world. Would they be comparable sort of size wise to our market? What do you guys think on that?
I don't think so. I think there's more wrestling cards than there are Star Wars cards. And well, for domestic releases, so I started talking about Topps, but you started talking about all kinds of stuff. I mean, I
combine Star Wars and Star Trek together.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's a pretty big market. I mean,
It
for the
is.
longest time, every company's had the license for Star Trek. Even up to, I think Rittenhouse still has it, I think.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
there's tons of it out there. So I mean, just a lot.
Yeah, because
I did Star Wars as a kid too. I mean, I did Star Wars as a kid, got rid of a lot of my cards, got back into it again in probably in my late 20s, early 30s, started collecting. When I first started doing before WTC was Com Collect, and that was one of our 4 things was wrestling, Star Wars, Playboy, and Buffy. It was a 4-card spread. Then you click on each card, it would take you to that category, it would take you to all the checklists and information about those particular cards. And then I just kind of narrowed it down when I refocused and rebranded everything to WTC, became just about wrestling. But Star Wars was a big thing for me.
Playboy's non-sport, Buffy's non-sport. Like it pretty much, if it's not stick and ball, it's non-sport, correct?
Correct.
Right. Now, which leads us to the question that we're going to wrap this discussion around, and we're going to go around the horn on this one because it leads to that. Is wrestling non-sport, or is it sport, or is it both? And let's talk about it in the card world first, because we can extrapolate to the larger world of sports entertainment versus athletic, catch as can style wrestling. But Ryan, sport or non-sport, or both?
It's both. It's both, because when I sell wrestling cards on eBay, I put it in the sports category. But when I'm on the EPAC chat boards, I'm in the non-sports, and it's kind of it's such a weird. Usually it's very, very clear. Like for me, my first non-sports set was 1990 Impel Marvel, which was 30. Tony's nodding his head. He knows. Collectors today could not handle it because it was 36 packs, 12 cards a pack, and you got like 1 or 2 holograms a box. That was it. There was no autographs. There was nothing else.
Those holograms are badass, though.
Oh, those sets are fantastic. Those Impel sets, 1, 2, and 3, 99, 91, 92. But I remember pulling, was it Wolverine? A Wolverine hologram out of a 90. Like my brother and I thought we had just won the world. Seriously. We were so excited. But that's very clearly non-sports. And then I think if you talk about wrestling, there's the pageantry of wrestling, which would make it maybe more non-sports, but then there's the athletic part of it that would make it sports. I think you could argue it both ways. I think
MMA is sport for sure, right?
100%.
Right.
100%.
Wrestling, like you
and
said.
I think though, when you compare wrestling to MMA, wrestling has a predetermined outcome, right? Whereas MMA, we'd like to think doesn't. There's 2 guys or 2 gals go in there, they throw right hooks, and we see who wins. So I think that if you're going to argue on the non-sports side, you'll say, well, it's a predetermined outcome with a lot of pageantry, and that's why it's non-sports. But it's still a very, very physical activity that you have to be in really great shape to do, and it's a sport. So I think you can argue both ways.
Chuck, what do you think?
I pretty much agree with everything Ryan said. I have always referred to wrestling as sports because to me, these guys are athletes no matter what. And you got to be an athlete to play in basketball, football, baseball. You got to hockey. You got to be an athlete. These guys are athletes too because they get in that. They got to perform at a high level, and they got to be in shape, and they got to be able to do it. And on the other end too, they've got to know how to portray their characters. So they're kind of a cross between an actor and a sports figure. It's a kind of a little of both, like Ryan said. You got.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, when Vince came up with the idea of sports entertainment, right? He did that for insurance purposes.
Do the stuff that they're doing, and to be in shape, I consider that an athlete. I remember when I first started going to indie shows, they actually referred to them as exhibitions instead of a performance. Well, you have baseball exhibitions, you have football exhibitions, you have wrestling exhibitions. It kind of all groups together, but you just have to be in shape. You have to be an athlete to be a professional wrestler. Everything else is just, added fun on top,
Tony, in the Non-Sport Update magazine, we found a beautiful write-up for WrestlingTradingCards.com with a picture, and so there we are. So second time. They certainly treat wrestling as non-sport, although it's not their focus. But you do find, those guys that are sort of custodians of the non-sports world, they consider it that way. And
it's a weird hybrid of things. I mean,
hybrid's a good word. Hybrid's an excellent word.
I used to argue that was always a non-sport. Back when we first started WTC in the early message board days, I used to argue that it was a non-sport. And I'm like, my example was, you don't see McGuire getting up to the plate cutting a promo before he goes and takes his at bat. I like the way Ryan explained it, and I think it's a good hybrid where it can fall in both categories. It's what makes the wrestling trading card community so unique, is because it just has this really weird hybrid of things. We don't really care about stats. We don't have a season. It's just it's an entertainment with a really skilled athletes. And so you have actors portraying characters in predetermined outcome matches, but holy shit, no way can I do that. So, I can't go out there and hit 100-mile fastball either. So, it's a hybrid.
I think that's a perfect word. I think hybrid says it exactly right, because we can jump out of the card world and just look at wrestling in general. And Vince came in the 90s and said, for insurance purposes, we're sports entertainment. And that sort of took it there, towards scripted, more like a movie or a television show. So if the genre itself is both, then it's not out of this question to say, hey, so are the sports cards. Can you guys think of any other anything else that might straddle both, that could be non-sport and entertainment? I mean, you think bowling, lesser sports, but no, like wrestling is the only thing that really, for me, that comes to mind.
Bowling's a sport. There's always this argument, like with golf. Is golf a sport or a skill?
Or a game.
Or a game. But we play games in football. We play games in
Well,
baseball. We play
yeah,
games in
those
basketball.
skills and games also apply to all those other sports. So
I know. And
And,
it,
and
you know,
fantasy cards like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, they're obviously non-sport. They're not sports,
yes,
but
yeah,
they
no.
sort of occupy their own world. They've gone off to as CCGs, and they have their own category a little bit separate. But for us, we've sort of, I want to say a bastard child, where do we fit?
well,
I think we've all hit
you
the
bring
nail on
that
the head.
point up.
Hybrid is exactly right.
You bring that point up too, and then you guys refer to things as CCGs, and that is one aspect of it. There's also a thing called TCGs, and so you have CCGs with a collectible card game, but you also have a thing called a trading card game, and that's where like Slam Attacks falls in that. It now falls in that same realm as like Pokemon games and Magic the Gathering, and as it does in wrestling as well. So there's another aspect of the hybridness of it all, is that it falls in all these different types of categories.
Well, every wrestling card ever released in India would be a TCG, right?
Yeah, because it's based on a game aspect of it. So
One
yeah,
we've ever seen.
yeah, absolutely.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is, given that we're talking about wrestling as non-sports, Chuck and I were talking last week, and we said, we were referring to those Rock Star Trek Voyager cards that we got in Atlantic City. We discovered those and we jumped on them. And I think you said Rittenhouse, Ryan. I believe they're a Rittenhouse release.
They are.
So you think that, there's a lot of guys in wrestling that have done movies. And then, of course, there's been trading card sets that have come out of those movies. And then Chuck and I started talking about, well, what other wrestlers have appeared in non-sport card sets? And I'll put it back to you, Chuck, because I'm sure you've got a lot to talk about. We can throw that around.
I touched on quite a few, but a couple of them are pretty well known. I found a couple pretty obscure ones, but the ones that are the one that's I think really well known and still pretty readily available is from 1985. It was a Cyndi Lauper card set.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone talks about the Cyndi Lauper and Hulk Hogan card in that set because there's Hogan in a totally non-wrestling gear. But not only is Hogan in there, we have Wendy Richter and we have Captain Lou. Right. And Captain Lou is in a like a little montage picture of him and her and all the members of the cast of her first video, the Girls Just Want to Have Fun video. No way is that any way wrestling related. So I think that's kind of cool that we have all these people from our line of hobby in a set of cards that is music related. So that was kind of an interesting find, and I did a little research, and I'm still finding a lot of them online. They seem to be pretty easily available and not too expensive. Another thing I found, well, I was going to mention the Rock Star Trek, but you've already touched on that one. Back in 2003, Looney Tunes made a movie called Back in Action. Who was in that movie?
Goldberg.
Yeah, and autograph from that.
Yep.
So that was kind of a neat. That one was a surprise to me. I wasn't aware of that one. I knew he was in the movie. I didn't know a card set had been made of that.
Good old
real quick, that card set also has Brendan Fraser in it.
Yeah.
And I have that card, the Brendan Fraser card, and with his Oscar win this year for The Whale, that card is taken off. Sure.
Well, he also has one in The Mummy as well.
Yep, he does too. You're right. Absolutely.
Yep.
And Steve Martin's in that set too.
Correct. He has an autograph as well.
Yep, I have that card too.
Inkworks did a good job. Inkworks, I mean, we can talk a long time about stuff. I had a long-standing relationship with Inkworks in their entire 11-year run. And they put out a lot of quality stuff with a lot of big names. Everything from what we just talked about to Angelina Jolie to Tommy Lee Jones. They put a lot of great products out for non-sport stuff.
Of course, then following up with the Mummy movie, they did the follow-up, the Scorpion King, and we got that famous Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson autograph card. Completely unrelated to wrestling. Again, it was just a movie, so no wrestling mentioned in it at all. So there's a lot of this stuff out there that unless you do, if you dig, you can find it. But the normal collector just wouldn't realize that these are out there. Another one a couple that I found was from Upper Deck back in about 2015. They did hockey sets, but they had CM Punk in it, They had Bret Hart in it. They
That's
both did
the contour set, upper deck
Yes.
contour.
Yep, you got. So there they are. I mean, it's not a non-sport set that they're in, but it's out of their element. It's not a wrestling card, but it is another line of sports that they're in. Then probably one of my favorites, 1982, Rocky III. We have a card of Mr. T as Clubber Lang. Again, a wrestler crossing over into the movie and gets a card made out of it. So we have that Mr. T. I don't know if I really consider Mr. T a wrestler, but he did a lot of stuff. I kind of consider him a, kind of a crossover.
Wiener.
2006, we had a larger card. It was more of a 4x6, more of a postcard size. It was Kane from his See No Evil movie.
Yep.
And we got that out there. It was a cell card. So we got those out there. We have, these are some fun ones here. I've seen these. I've actually seen these. I've never held one. I don't own one, but I've actually seen them. And Ryan, you probably have these in your collection, or you probably know a little bit more about these. It was something called Minor League Baseball Celebrity Jersey Cards. And we had Tammy Sitch.
I have no idea what this set is.
In
Really?
1904, and in 2004, we had Velvet Sky. And they were called Celebrity Jersey Cards from Minor League Baseball. And of course, what Tammy was wearing, I wouldn't consider a jersey. It was more of a team shirt, what was left of it. And Velvet Sky had on a thing I think for the Brooklyn Cyclones was their minor league that she represented. So those were a couple pretty neat cards. They went into another sport, but they were, in my opinion, Tammy and Velvet was two of the top women, years ago. And so those, I guess the last thing I want to bring up is something that just showed up online a couple of days ago. And Paul, you brought to my attention. There's a guy on X right now, similar to Zan's name. I think his name is Z-A-I-N instead of our Zan that we normally talk about. He found lobby photo cards of Suburban Commando that had the Undertaker in it. And I saw the spread that he posted on eBay selling the sets, or somebody posted on eBay. It also has Hulk Hogan in it. So not only is there an Undertaker card, we got Hulk Hogan, and they're more like theater hobby cards, lobby cards. So
I'd never seen those before. That was the first time I've ever seen anything like that.
I've seen the movie a million times, but never knew there was lobby cards. So those are kind of the few that I hit on that were wrestlers who went into non-wrestling card sets. I did come up with a few people that were, maybe we could make this a separate topic after that, but I found a couple celebrities that aren't wrestlers that made it on to wrestling cards.
Right, sure.
And on those I only got about 4 or 5 of those, but we had Jay Leno from one of the WCW sets. I think it was a WCW NWO Series 1. Pete Rose, who was on with a lot of the Leaf stuff. He did a lot of Leaf products. I got a couple signatures of his. Lawrence Taylor from the Action Pact. We had one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, I said sarcastically. Bubba the Love Sponge from TNA, the New Era, and Rampage Jackson. And he glory. Now I kind of consider him more into. I mean, he was like a MMA guy.
He was a huge name of MMA. Quentin Rampage Jackson, huge name. I mean, one of my favorite fighters. He came up in the Chuck Liddell, George St. Pierre era, which was really when UFC was blossoming, and Randy Couture and all those guys. No, Rampage was awesome. And I'm kind of, you're opening an old wound, because I was out at a jiu-jitsu tournament out here in Arizona, and it was one of those where the kids go in the morning and the adults go in the afternoon. And I had taken my daughters and their friends to lunch, and Rampage Jackson showed up to the tournament. And
Oh,
it was
wow.
a small venue, took pictures with everyone. I got back and they go, "You missed Rampage." I go, "Oh, you got to be shitting me."
Happened.
So, but yeah, no, he was a big name. Still is.
Yeah, because he jumped into TNA for about 10 minutes one year. And, you know, he's in there, but he ended up in their very last set, their TNA Glory set. I got one of the autographed ring mats of him from that set. And
Don't forget that TriStar era too had Danny Bonaducci.
Yes, autographs. That's right.
did forget about him. Yes.
There's a few names that TriStar put out that were people who crossed over that were football players or actors that came in and they got autograph cards and stuff like that as well.
Now, does anybody about a card set called Combat Cuts or Combat Crate or Combat Cuts?
No.
I have a card in my possession, and I out just before we started this this here. Hang on just 1 second here. Did I lose you there?
There you go.
Somebody's trying to phone in on my phone there. Off. But Combat Cuts put out a card with it's an autograph and a piece of swatch of Bill Goldberg.
Oh, wow.
Seen that.
I've seen that card. Yeah,
there's
I haven't. What is it?
Like 50 of these. It's from Combat Cuts, and I had never heard of the company or seen anything of it. And it's got his autograph up here at the top and a piece of what they call his stingray that he wore. And that was an interesting piece. I mean, it's definitely not wrestling oriented. He's swinging a baseball bat.
Well, I think that was was that a fundraiser card?
It may have been. I don't honestly know.
I can't remember. But I've seen that card before. It's cool.
Yeah.
Guys, am I mistaken on this? But was there a Roddy Piper They Live set from the movie?
No.
There was yes, there was, and there wasn't. I mean, there was a very
foggy memory of something along those lines.
There's a very small card set run that was done with stickers for They Live, and he's in that. Yes.
Yeah,
I was going to bring that up.
I have a vague memory of seeing that.
They never made an official set though.
No,
I am one of the biggest John Carpenter fans. I love even the stuff people don't like. I love John Carpenter. I love The Thing. I love They Live, In the Mouth of Madness, Prince of Darkness. I love all that stuff. And I do a lot of customs where I have a guy who makes cards for me, then I mail him into the signings. Because, you know, like Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki in the Marvel Universe, you know, if you buy his sticker autograph from an Upper Deck product, it's probably $1,500 or more. He doesn't sign that much, but he was signing for SWAU, the Star Wars Autograph Universe, I think is what they go by, for $275. So I had a card made, and that card's being signed now. My dream card, which I'll never ever have, is to have a Roddy Piper They Live signed card where he's the picture where he's standing in the bank.
yeah.
And
you could do a cut signature on that. Make your own.
I could, and I still may. But I mean, just when this topic was brought up, I started thinking about all the stuff that we're never going to see. You know, we're never going to see an Andre the Giant Princess Bride card. Autograph.
You're not going to see my VS Senior James Bond card. Because I looked into that, but I found out that he was on one of those early James Bond movies. I'm like, oh shit, is there a card here?
One of the biggest misses, I think, is that when I think it was it Rittenhouse that put out the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie.
Oh, with Macho Man.
Missed out on Macho Man.
Right.
They missed out on Macho Man, and that card as Bonesaw or whatever.
Tony, you just said something interesting.
Yeah.
You just talked about custom when you said, "Oh, you can make your own." Make your own.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, crazy card collector. When I was down in Arizona with you guys, he was working on a custom set that he never put out because he wouldn't get the rights to it, which was double-sided of the wrestler and then them appearing in a movie. And he had like 90 of them. So he's probably jumping up and down, going, "Oh, you forgot this, you forgot that." He's probably got a bunch off the top of his head. But I told him, if you make that set, I'll take one, because it was just so cool, that whole notion. Because I think Triple H has been in movies, obviously.
Blade 3.
All
for.
Now I have a custom set that was sold I got it on eBay here a couple of years ago, and it is based on Roddy Piper's They Live movie. And I think it's like a 9 or 10 card set. And it has just like little stills from the movie on it. that somebody put together, and they made a little wrapper for it and everything. And it looked like an old wax pack bubblegum wrapper. And on the bottom of it, it said 9 cards, bubblegum not included, which I thought was clever.
Yep.
So I was going to include that, and I thought, no, it's really a custom card. It's not a wide release card, so I didn't really include it. But if you want a good little Piper set, that's kind of a neat set to have. I think.
Oh, go ahead, Chuck.
Go ahead.
So we're actually missing a really big one. We're missing the 2005 Doom Dwayne Johnson autograph.
Right.
I'm talking about.
Yep.
That up until Leafs release here in a few weeks, that was the first Dwayne Johnson signed card. Because he signed for The Rock in Comic Images, and he signed as The Rock in the Scorpion King and the Mummy, and then he signed as Dwayne Johnson in the Doom set. And that is probably that Doom card. I had read somewhere that card's limited to 50. I think they did 1,000 cases. And my memory, I'm trying to remember all this. I think there was 1,000 cases of Doom. There were 50 Rock or 50 Dwayne Johnsons. And that card, you almost never see that card anymore.
Well, it's probably even less than that, because you're talking about a company, Inkworks, that was owned by Alan Kaplan, who was notorious.
Actually, I think that was Artbox.
Artbox did not do Doom. It's an Inkworks product.
Is it Inkworks?
Yep, I have a set.
No, I believe you.
Yeah,
I can't remember, between all these sets back there.
Because I don't recall Artbox doing traditional trading cards. They always did lenticulars and motion cards, and they did some really weird stuff. Like even with the Harry Potter license they had, it was always done like they had a trading card license for that with the foil stamping on it, like for the Harry Potter side. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is an Artbox one.
Let me check real quick. We don't want to go there.
Because I have a Doom set with one of the minor characters. I have an autograph of one of the minor characters in it. Came with the set.
It's Artbox.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's but they had some great stuff with that Artbox company. They did a lot of weird things like that. So for them to do like strictly trading cards, I can only think of now Doom, and I guess now with the Harry Potter stuff, because everything else was like really weird miniature lenticulators and large lenticulators and motion cards.
Dog tags. Did they do dog tags too?
Yeah. Tops at dog tags.
I remember in the early 2000s, Artbox put out a bunch of weird shit.
They put a lot of shit out, and I got a lot of their cards because I was so heavy in the non-sport cards as a whole. I was buying case of stuff of Wicca. I'd buy their statues and stuff like that, and they came up with and if you bought a certain amount of cases, you got X amount of boxes or cases of art boxes, lenticular motion, Lord of the Rings cards.
Nice.
Yeah. There's so much.
Tony, given that we've uncovered so much, I alluded to this to Chuck the other day. Do we want to create a little section on the sites now, maybe just a general catch-all page for all these cats that have come into non-sports? All these guys that we've mentioned, wrestlers, because
we talked about this.
We normally don't do one-offs, but it's interesting, because if you want to find out, well, we know that The Rock, you just mentioned Doom, but we know about Scorpion King, and we'd like to spread that. So that's something I wouldn't mind doing maybe in the new year, is creating just a wrestlers and non-sports heading for both sites.
Just be under one page, one master checklist page of everything.
Just alphabetical. I'd
even throw them. Throw them alphabetical.
Prices on them because I wouldn't have a clue, but just so that we have them notated somewhere. Wrestlers that appeared in non-wrestling sets. But we can
put it together. I put it in alphabetical order, and then alphabetical if a character has a certain particular person, like The Rock has more than one thing, then you put it in chronological order from there.
Yeah, because these guys like Batista and Cena, obviously The Rock, as they make their way down Hollywood, you're going to see them on more cards. I mean, I'm sure there's Batista Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously. I mean, there's going to be lots of guys we haven't mentioned, but think anybody that's made their way down onto television, because King Kong Bundy was on Married with Children, there are Married with Children cards, but I don't know if there is a Bundy card, and there's so much, as we uncover in the wrestling world. Well, we found this, we found that, and I found those hockey ones too, Chuck, a while ago, and I was quite surprised to see that Bret Hart had a hockey card, and that's why I thought it'd be fun to talk about this. So before we wrap things up, let's go with Tony and I like to do anecdotes when we have our guests on, our collectors, and basically you talk about anything, what's going on in the wrestling card market, or you can keep it non-sports, or anything that's on your mind that you want to share with us, kind of put you on the spot, so to speak. So Ryan, what's going on in the wrestling card world that you want to share?
Well, I just got my Brutus Beefcake Continuum autograph from Leaf yesterday.
that.
And the guys in our chat, I ordered two. So for those of you who don't know, Leaf Continuum is
Print
a
run
set
of 3.
yeah, you guys are really funny. So so Leaf Continuum, about once a week they put out an ad for, it's a print to order autograph, and it could be a bowler, a pickleball player, a football player, a college football player, an influencer, a wrestler, and so it's this continuously numbered set, and they do a print to order. So I ordered two, and I ordered two of the beefcake because I didn't want to get one. Like, he's pretty good about the stickers, about staying on sticker, but just in case he went off, I didn't want to have to be like, no, I got to buy another one. So I bought two. So I texted the group. I go, hey, this just popped out. I ordered two. What do you guys think the print run's going to be? 3, 4. I think Flex goes 2.
2.
So, but surprisingly, it was 66, which shocked the hell out of me. I thought it'd be in the 20s. So there are people buying this stuff. So, and I'm almost done with my Beefcake Select Rainbow from this year. I do have the 101. I'm just waiting on some of the little niche stuff to pop up. And I'm going to put Tony on the spot. I'm waiting for, I know we talked about this, but I'm waiting for a Kevin Nash signing. And I know it may happen far down the road, but just in case it does happen, I do have the Super Shredder Ninja Turtles 2 card ready to go when that eventually does happen. So, but there's, non-sports is a market that's really heating up. I noticed a lot more non-sports sellers at the National this year. I think people are we talk about nostalgia a lot, right? Nostalgia this, nostalgia that. I think there's a lot of nostalgia. Like, I can look at my wall and I can say, okay, I really liked, for Chuck, I got the Liam Neeson Batman Begins autograph, right?
Oh.
And I love that card, and I can say, God, he was so good in that movie. And there's Gene Hackman and Sylvester Stallone, and I can think about all those movies, like I do with sports, and I just really enjoy it. It's a really fun aspect of collecting, and unfortunately, it's starting to get pricey with the rest of the stuff too. So I know that Official Picks just announced the Michael Douglas signing, that's pretty big news in the non-sport world. I would imagine he's probably going to be minimum $500. So we shall see. But yeah, non-sports are fun. Check them out. And there's a lot of crossover between sports and non-sports.
Absolutely. I mean, I know I just touched on such a small amount of them, but there's tons of them out there. But at least it gives people an idea of, that there really is something else out there to look for. That just kind of gives you a starting point to go from. But as far as me, this year with my wrestling collection, the rest of the year, I'm probably not going to be doing any purchases other than when the volume 2 of the collector series comes out, because I just kind of need to take a break from the collecting for some personal reasons. And it's given me time to focus more on getting some more stuff done for WTC behind the scenes. It's given me time to go through what I already have and kind of enjoy them now, because I was collecting so quickly. I'd throw them in a binder and put them on the shelf and do the next one. Now I can go back and go through them and enjoy them and see what I actually have on hand. And but like I said, from now till the end of the year, I'm kind of backing off on the purchases, because like you, Ryan, things are getting a little pricey, and I'm just not set to be able to handle that at this point. So
yeah, it's just collecting. I don't care what you collect: stamps, coins, bottles, whatever. You got to be careful you don't collect everything.
Yeah,
I was
because
just going to say,
where you get in trouble.
I'm enjoying this respite from Panini, I got to say, because it was overwhelming. It really was. I mean, the frequency that this stuff was coming out, and as Chuck and I being master set collectors, it was, it was easy. It wasn't easy, and it was expensive, and it was a little stressful. That's the last thing you want this hobby to be. It's like, you barely get done one, and there's another one upon you. And I still, a year and 2 months later, haven't finished Immaculate. You know what I mean? And Tony said, "Oh, you will, and I haven't done it yet."
You will.
I will, but like it was arduous, these last couple of years, this Panini era. I've enjoyed, I'm not nothing against that, but that's one of my things, is that when you talk about how expensive things were and how you just said, Ryan, very true. When you're a completist, that's a real dangerous label to have, because you feel you got to have everything. And, you guys that PC guys, your Loomis collectors and your Carrion collectors and your Becky collectors, it's a trap, because there's always something coming around the corner, and you want to get the top parallel, you want to get the top autograph, and you're spending big money, and it's hard. So we really do it for the love of collecting, the love of the genre. But yeah, I agree with you, Chuck, 100%. I'm glad that you're going to buy the collector series too. You're not going to leave
Yeah.
that one off. But yeah, for me too. It was getting a bit out of hand. So I don't doubt that when Topps comes back under the the Fanatics banner, that we're going to have this kind of nonsense again. But yeah, I agree. Tony, what do you have for us? Wrap this thing up.
Nothing much, man. Just working on the store. I mean,
And I guess we should thank Tony, by the way. Everyone doesn't know, but Tony just came back from the dentist, and when he got on with this, his face was like this, full of gauze. So true trooper.
I mean, for me, it's store stuff, doing my store signings, continuing that trading card line going on. Was a big success for the Kurt Angle signing. It was a pretty big turnout. Ryan knows he was there.
Yeah, the Kurt Angle thing was incredible. I mean,
Um,
the whole day. I know Tony and I talked about it. He was worried about, getting too many people here and there. I thought it ran really smooth. I thought it was really.
I mean, I scripted the whole thing out, and so I had it all scripted out, but from the time, like what I wanted to happen between this time and this time, and for the most part, it went almost to the minute of what I wanted. With still 20 minutes to spare, so that was it worked out pretty darn good, just like that. So you got cards coming your way too, Paul. So don't worry.
I was just going to say, you read my mind. I was just going to say, like I'm going after that collection, so I need the last two now, but I definitely want the eight.
Kurt was one of the most sincere people I've met. Period. He was absolutely fantastic with everybody. I actually went to high school in Western PA. So he knew the high school I went to. We talked about Pennsylvania a little bit, talked about my girls wrestling and the jiu-jitsu. And, he took
and he was really interested in that too, when you were talking.
Yeah, 100%. It wasn't just lip service. He stopped what he was doing and watched a couple of videos. I showed him some, Emma wants, my 10-year-old who wins all the tournaments. She wants to wrestle in middle school and high school. And so I one of my buddies who is a high school wrestler, he coaches her privately. And so I have some videos, and he was like, oh yeah, that's great. She's got to do this and turn that way, and really good form. And he was very invested in what I was showing him. It wasn't just like, yeah, that's cool, I'll see you later. It was a great day. That's all I can say. It's all a great day.
So we got that series going on. Paul hinted on the fact that we got the Wrestling Collector Card Series 2 coming out here shortly. I know that the base set is already printed and should be on its way to me, I think. And then the medals just got paid for and are into print now. So we're getting close for that one too. So, but as far as collecting goes, I just pick up a Loomis card here and there when I can. I'm not even a master set collector of that. I just get what I can when I can. I don't think I even own any Loomis 101s. I don't lose sleep over not getting them. I just go after what I can, and I have fun doing it. So I've limited myself. And I used to be in your guys' situations, Paul and Chuck. I used to be a master set collector back when master set was actually a true master set.
Yeah.
And I kicked out of that. I tapped out in 06. So I'm kind of done with that. And, I lost my love of collecting for a while there, but kept the site, going. And then now I'm kind of having a lot of fun just doing Loomis stuff and, dabble a little bit of Kurt Angle things here and there, but that's about it. But yeah, for the most part, just having fun, man. Just running the store and having fun.
That's why, non-sports, sports, whatever we're into is, enjoy yourself, guys. That's what we're here for. We enjoy creating these content, these videos. We enjoy hanging out with each other. We enjoy collecting. We enjoy going to the national and doing all that. It's all just one big labor of love. So with that,
I mean, I could do a whole episode just talking about strictly non-sport and just strip all of wrestling out of it. I could do a whole series just on that.
You could do an hour on Harry Potter. You could do an hour on Batman. You could do an hour on Star Trek. You could do we could do 50 hours of videos.
I mean, for the longest time, I used to help out a guy named Julio Berger from that's his name, from Julio's Collectibles from years
Julio's
and years
cards.
And years
I remember his cards.
Yeah. So I used to help him out every Saturday when I was free, and I would go to the booth, and people started calling me their non-sport broker. That's what I was. So they would tell me what to buy, when to buy, There wasn't a whole talk about selling. It was always about what to buy. What was hot? What should I buy? And at the time, movies don't translate well into trading cards. They typically hadn't translated well outside of Star Wars, outside of something like that. But typically they didn't translate well. Your TV shows always were a hit. Buffy, Angel, Xena, X-Files. Those things were always doing well outside of your Marvel and DC stuff. Until Spider-Man came out, Marvel was sat dormant for a long time too. So when the first Spider-Man came out, shit, we had these people coming in all the time trying to buy out all the old, Fleer and Skybox stuff, trying to get that stuff and selling it downtown in LA. So it's a whole different topic. I'd love to discuss with anybody about non-sport stuff. I have decades of history of non-sport stuff like that. Starting as a kid in sports and doing baseball for the most part, a little bit of football, but mostly baseball, and then getting into wrestling, and then wrestling opened the door for non-sports for me. And then I just became a big non-sport wrestling guy.
Well, all three of you guys are very knowledgeable. That's why I wanted Ryan and Chuck, because we've talked about this side of things many times, even though we're wrestling guys, obviously. I just thought it'd be interesting to get into this, and I wanted to thank you guys because you guys I've learned something from this. You talked about one more thing before we go about the beefcakes, Ryan. How many? He hasn't signed a lot, has he? There's not been a lot of Brutus autographs.
He's got quite a bit.
He has a lot. He had a lot of Leaf stuff.
Right,
Leaf stuff.
Right, the Leaf stuff.
2016, 2017, he was in all of the Topps Legends sets.
Okay.
He's been popping up in the Panini sets. First off, he has one of the best autographs you'll ever see.
Yeah.
First off.
There's a handful of guys,
that era, man. That era had great
guys like Savage, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, that they just didn't sign a lot. So I was just wondering if he was in that camp.
Yeah, no, he's and that's another thing. It's such a sad moment for me when I look at like the Vince McMahon Superfractor auto, and I think, what if we had a Macho Man Superfractor autograph?
Well, that'd be great.
Well, what if we had an Andre the Giant, a Roddy Piper, all those guys that are no longer with us, and girls too, and it's, I mean, it makes the other stuff more valuable, I guess. But I think the thing about non-sports for me is that it's like Tony always says: if it's something you really want, you don't overpay.
Nope.
And for
because,
me,
I mean, and you hit it about too. Looking at your wall, and you go, God, look at that. That Liam Neeson's like that. I love that movie. You know what? I'm going to go watch that movie this weekend. I'm inspired to watch that movie.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, is that I find that when I was buying sports and collecting sports, it was more about the flip. I was trying to make money off of it, right? And then you get smart. You realize, well, if I'm going to buy a box in today's market for $500, right? And 99 times out of 100, I'm going to lose my ass, right? It's the gambling aspect of it. Why don't I take that $500 and buy a card I want for $350 and go to dinner?
Yeah.
So
just like Drake said at the National, man, why should I spend $13,000 on a box of Transcendent in hopes I get that Vince, or just wait till it hits the market and buy it? I just saved myself $4,000 when I end up getting it for $9,000.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, is that, once you get past the gambling mentality of it and you get more into the collecting aspect of it, I think you enjoy it a lot more, because I can't tell you, like 2018 was my quote unquote come to Jesus year, where I was opening everything in sight, like to the point where I lost thousands.
Keep it down over there. Keep it down.
But I mean, she's in the other room. So but you would go to the store and you'd drop $2,000, right? And you'd walk out with your box of what you have, and the first stoplight, you sit there and you go, why did I just do that? Like I can't help but think that this is what the guy who was up in blackjack and pissed away the mortgage did, And so I really had to rewire my brain as to how I was going to collect. And I've been a lot happier with it that way too. And I'm buying stuff I want now, because nothing was worse than spending $1,000 and having to sell the cool shit you got to make back the money, So collect what you like. You can never overpay if you like it.
That's true.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up there. Thanks again. Why don't we just go around the horn and give us your coordinates, and then we'll sign off. Ryan?
Oh, Jesus Christ. We don't know how to find any of us.
Yeah, like, I mean,
I am
anyways,
at
you have to end somehow.
Non-sport showcase on Instagram, and I will be at the National next year in Cleveland. So please stop and say hi. I am the big bald guy who always looks pissed off. I am not. It is genetics. That's how my face looks. I apologize.
Thanks,
Yep.
Dad.
How about you, Chuck?
Just at Chuckster on X. That's usually where you can find me. And that's pretty much it.
Tony?
WrestlingTradingCards.com. All the social media plugs are at the bottom of every single page. X, Twitter, whatever the hell I want to call it, Instagram, TikTok, MySpace.
And you're very good
I
that
mean,
way of making sure that when you do the write-ups that you put all the links and all that, but I still haven't seen original music credit yet.
oh, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure I get that for you. I can go back and edit that anytime you like, sir.
That's one of my best things about doing the shows is going back to all my little snippets of music that I used to write years and years ago when I was learning how to use all the equipment, and then finding something that I could put at the beginning of the episode.
There you go. I love it.
My name's Paul Anand, the Wrestling Card Price Guide. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. Again, thanks to Chuck and Ryan. Non-sports, it's a big part of the hobby as well. So, if you're into pop culture, if you're into movies, if you're into nostalgia, if you're into TV, if you're into superheroes, Marvel, and on and on and on it goes, beyond wrestling, which is part of the non-sport world as well. That's something you want to get into. So thanks, everybody, again for watching, and we'll see you soon.